Good evening, reader. So, Oak Bloke here, and this is my article that you're getting ahead of Substack subscribers. I'm trying a different approach of releasing things first to YouTube and then later to Substack. So this is my article anyway that you're seeing here. So DEC-mand and supply. So rising demand and stagnant supply. I wonder what this might be about. See, the DEC themed titles continue, and here we have. Not sure who that might be, but yeah, I'll leave you to your imagination with that. And winter is coming, I wrote. Winter came. Short has melted, ironically, facing up to their chilling losses. You might decide, you might say they decided to bolt on. So yeah, so this article's about how there is, there's been a cold winter. At the moment, the weather has warmed and it's warm spring, and that's driving down demand. The point of this article is that from what I've been reading, that the outlook for US gas is actually looking really good. So this is the current picture according to the EIA, which is that storage hit very low levels. The lower dotted line is the minimum average of the past 5 years. So it sort of bumped along the minimums, but has rebounded. The warmer weather has meant lower draws on gas, so less gas needed for heating, in other words, and that's obviously caused storage to increase and levels to start to restore. But yeah, the other aspect to this is that oil demand, fear of recession has increased. So a lot of oil companies have really been dropping, quite severely actually. There's one that I track, which is Permian Resources, which is in the Permian, and that's a holding of an investment trust that has Permian Resources as one of its holdings. So anyway, that one dropped down to $10, and that was down from about $16, I think it was. So we've seen some really severe falls. So I didn't intend to show this, but I might as well. So yeah, just been looking at future prices as well. But yeah, if we look at PR, just to kind of say that this is not just a sort of phenomenon that's affected Diversified, but I mean, if we look at yeah, so it's at 12 now, so you can sort of see it dropped to 1036, 1036 back to 12, but it's recently been at 15, $16, and back here it was at and this is I mean, if I showed you the presentation deck of Permian, I mean, they're doing great guns, record profits and very very successful organization. So this drop, this drop here is kind of mirroring this whole dynamic of just a pessimism towards oil. Now, of course, DEC has some oil, but it's only 26% of production since Maverick. So, is a 33% fall in the price justified on the back of that? And obviously, you can sort of see there was this fall and then a further fall here. So this is the sort of fall per Permian, whereas this one is has obviously been going on a bit longer. But yeah, so we've got a warmer spring, but the thing that I guess I was looking at was, and I'm just sort of recapping some numbers here. So these were the 2024 numbers. This is a calculation that I've done, so you have to read my article to look at why I've come up with that adjustment there. But that's adjusted EBITDA of 472 and free cash flow of 170 million. And then the forecast numbers, and these are just DEC's own numbers that they've guided the market to say our EBITDA is going to grow by about 400 million. So it's going to pretty much double, almost double. Free cash flow is going to more than double, 170 to 420. And then, whilst I've said there's no guided adjusted comprehensive income, but in my opinion, to see something like 250, 300, perhaps even 350, is kind of what I sort of see as, I mean, for the EBITDA to grow double. Now, obviously, depreciation will grow because of the Maverick assets, but we know what those depreciation numbers look like. The obviously the interest will grow because the debt has increased, but we can extrapolate what that will look like. And then obviously tax is tax, so that's a percentage as well. So so to see a doubling or a more than doubling of profit versus this profit and bearing in mind, of course, there's 50 million of synergies as well. So 250, perhaps 300, perhaps 350, and I'll substantiate that a bit later on, just to kind of so prospectively, we're talking about a company that whose current year earnings we're looking at somewhere between 2.8 and 3.8 times its share price. So I mean, hopefully that kind of means that sort of indicates to you that it's incredibly cheap. That, I mean, 2.8 would be that for every so I mean, if we did this, if we said for every pound that we invest into DEC, if we do that, then it's generating 35.7p of income each year for a PE of 2.8. So I mean, obviously, that much income is very strong. In other words, it's very cheap. I mean, it should be at least double, if not potentially a bit more. Its current share price would sort of be, just looking at earnings relative to price, that it's at a very cheap price. Anyway, and that's kind of just going by the guidance of the company itself. But what I've looked at and sort of thought about was that, well, what if it's actually a lot? It's actually sort of heading towards a lot higher than the guidance. So why would that be? So I guess the background to this is that obviously generally people, when I say people, oil and gas companies will drill for oil, but then sometimes get gas, if you follow me. So the people don't generally drill for gas; they'll drill for oil, and then gas is sort of the bonus on the side. It's the byproduct rather than the intended product. And of course, I mean, that's not 100% true, but it's majority of the time true. So the fact that the oil price is so much lower, obviously that's had an impact on investment plans, and it's not just the price of oil. We can see that gas production in 2024 dropped in. So these are sort of different areas where production has increased or decreased. So we can see very small increases across uh, here, and here, with a large rise here, Permian, this bit, and then a large drop in Haynesville, which is this bit here, the sort of Mississippi um, and East Texas sort of area. So that was the past. This is the cumulative production. So we can see, in 2024, it sort of hit 115, 14, something like that. So we can see again, a large part of that is Appalachia, with a large growing area of Permian. But we know that Haynesville is just starting to decrease. Now, it was interesting then on the basis that, of course, here we're seeing big increase in 2024, that a couple of places, Reuters say growth to slow, despite the Trump plan of drill baby drill, which has probably been the most cliched cliche of 2025, probably. Either that or I love tariffs. Tariffs are my favorite word. Um, yeah, take your pick. But yeah, drill baby drill. I mean, I've seen that used dozens of times in different articles and different places. So, and I've used it myself. Uh, anyway, um, so it was interesting to see the Dallas Fed survey. That the break even on drilling is has gone up from $64 to 65 on average. So obviously that again varies depending on the but because the Permian is about 10,000 feet down, I mean, it's deep. You've got to drill very, very deep to get there. Obviously, it's expensive. Once you drill, you get prolific amounts of oil and potentially gas. But yeah, you've obviously got to put the investment in, and you're only going to put the investment in if, well, it's a couple of things. I mean, obviously, if the economics are there, but if the perception of the economics is going to be there. Now, I mean, to my mind, I mean, yes, reducing legislation and regulation and things, red tape that hold business back is a positive. But drill baby drill, if I were an oil executive, and I'm not, I mean, none of this is advice, by the way. This is just me talking about my opinion. And if you want to watch this, that's great, but you make your own investment decisions. Okay. So this is, if I were an oil executive, I'd be looking at this thinking, well, okay, if Trump's going to massively increase the supply of oil, bear in mind that the US is the biggest oil producer in the world, what's that going to do to prices? That's going to lower prices. And of course, Trump's been very proud of his record of the price at the pumps has dropped, and eggs have gone down, price of oil, price of gas, as in gasoline, has gone down, and he's very, very proud of that. And of course, that's a big electoral, um, yeah, a big electoral focus, I guess you could say. So, you know, great for the electorate, but not so great for oil executives. So, that's why we've seen this slowdown, and it's quite foreseeable, I think, that would or could happen, but obviously compounded now by the perception of recession. And again, whether that will or won't come to pass, I don't see any evidence to see that it will, other than everyone's talking about it all of a sudden. Like, oh yeah, yeah, we're heading towards doom and destruction and disaster and recession. And yes, and the slowdown was forecast. There's definitely evidence to that effect, but not of an actual recession. The it it it's kind of the equivalent of a super tanker, which the US is a super tanker after all. It's the biggest economy in the world. Um, Going from sort of 100 miles an hour to like minus 20 miles an hour in very, very, in other words, it would take a lot of momentum, a lot of negative momentum to slow that super tanker into a recession. I personally, I mean, even just data in the past week, the jobs data was strong. The trade data is strong. There's so many strong, apart from sentiment. The only thing that's not there is sentiment. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's definitely a slowdown, perhaps more. So Rystad also did some research, and they found that they saw that oil would. This is oil, but this is oil would increase. US oil would increase in 2025, but capex is dropping, and yeah, that's again, um, it's a negative. So it's interesting because the EIA obviously is conflicting and saying no, they see their forecast is for growth. So particularly here that they see the Permian increasing 10%. I mean, like 25.4 to 27.6 BCF per day. I mean, that is a massive jump there to there. and of course Reuters and Rystad are saying no, no, that you know that there's you know this research here from Rystad Energy, there's a link to it there, disagrees with this, that there's little or no growth. Now, I mean, 10% growth, 10%, but you think how much oil and gas are coming out of the Permian? Are they going to increase that by 10% in 1 year, in this year, when oil executives are worried about drill, baby, drill, when obviously the Middle East has increased its supply and OPEC have increased its supply of oil, gas, where oil prices are kind of at pretty low numbers. I find it very, very hard to believe that this growth here is nailed on. I just don't think that's accurate, and that's not just me saying it. It's Rystad, and that's Rystad is based on research. It's based on speaking to players in the oil and gas, and that's what they're saying. Um, in any event, it was interesting to see that the EIA is now forecasting much higher prices. So 25.80 in 2025, and what I'm doing here is obviously these numbers here, MMBTUs, I'm converting them into barrels of oil equivalent here. So that times 6, oh, sorry, yeah, that. 430 and then 460. So translates into that and to that. So that's much higher than what I was modeling. Much higher. And I did sort of say like I'm being conservative, and I wasn't. People say I'm constantly positive about DEC, and I don't think so. I mean, when I'm modeling prices that are, this was my model. I'm modeling prices that are way below. I was doing 65 oil, for example, because of course there was a proportion that was being hedged, and but last year, I mean, oil was about $82 a barrel, I think. So no, I don't think I've been overly positive. I think I've been quite conservative, really, and this is evidence to that. Anyway, so yeah, anyway, I sort of used the EIA numbers to see what they look like. So what you'll see here is these are my original numbers, and you'll see here, that is what 100, 200, about 260, 270 net profit. So that's kind of where I'm getting the numbers from. And all I'm doing here, look, is this is Q1 is sort of pre-Maverick, and then Q2 onwards is post-Maverick, and I'm doing a depletion here, barrel of oil 24.58, bearing in mind that this barrel of oil equivalent is 76%. I think I've got the mix up here. Look, 76% gas, and 24% oil. So I'm sort of putting together the gas and the natural gas liquids together there, to be fair, and then just doing the gas oil mix, and doing the split of hedged and unhedged, adding in the midstream, and I'm just using last year's number there to bring that through, not really counting anything for next level in these numbers. Just next level is here. Look, so that was my original forecast, and how that was going to look. What I then did was I plugged in these new numbers, so you can see them there. And this is an average. If you take that gets you to your 25.54. Okay, so you can see there the gross net profit then grows. And I did a couple of other adjustments as well. I mean, you'll see this sort of jump here. And that jump there was because I was assuming that Maverick was going to close in July, but of course it didn't close in July. It closed in kind of early April. So really, the depreciation should be classed from April as well, and obviously this borrowing was going to be sort of kick in the interest payments were going to kick in July. So no, they're kicking in April. So you can see obviously all the costs have increased. You know, the costs have increased. So that's kind of why that actually drops slightly, is because I'm making more pessimistic assumptions here. But even so, I mean, 150, 202, we're still at sort of 260, 270 net profit here. Although, of course, you know, these numbers here are, you know, this is kind of where I'm sort of reflecting it into the later part of 2025. Okay, so that's but what I then go on and do is I say, right, okay, well, the other factor here is, well, and I was just reading around stuff, and I noticed that the weather forecasters of the US are saying the forecast is hot. So you know, above average. So you can see here it's sort of, you know, 70-80% chance of above normal temperatures. These sort of blue and white colors would be, you know, and it's interesting because of course this is a La Nina year, so it should be colder than normal, um, but it's not. It's hotter than normal. So obviously that's that's a bit scary. That, you know, when we get to an El Nino year, which are generally hotter, so yeah, that's actually pretty bad. But yeah, this is interesting as well. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, you know, here we've got July spike, 88.7. Okay, and these lines here are the averages, so you can sort of see the average consumption has increased year after year after year. So this is sort of going back 10 years. But it's interesting because you can sort of see that, yes, you know, in the middle of summer there is a bit of a spike, but as the years go on, you can see that you know, it goes from being a very sort of small bump here to being you know, very much like a W shape. You know, these spikes, summer spikes, get much more pronounced in the more recent years compared to the older years. Um, and obviously you know, this number here is what, about 60, 66, and this number here is 88. So you can see that there's a sort of 33% difference from 10 years ago, which a lot. You know, 22.7 difference, from 10 years ago. So that that obviously, you know, that's something that we potentially will see a much higher 2025 summer. So rather than rebuilding inventories, you know, supply demand metric, I think we could sort of see a much lower refill this summer, and that's obviously going to be very bullish for prices. You know, that this was a sort of further evidence that because demand has increased, and obviously storage is storage, so obviously the storage hasn't increased relative to the increase of demand, that you can see here, this is sort of the last 12 months demand cover, so it all looks reasonable. You know, obviously, you know, this bit here, you can see over the past few years, the you know, the the number of days has, it's sort of, you know, this one was sort of capped off at 50, this one caps off at 35, this one caps off at 30. But this is our average, min max average for 15 years, 2008 to 2023. And this black line here is where it currently is, or currently was, back in January, February this year. So in other words, you know, lower than 20 days worth of storage, relative to the demand, because obviously demand has increased. So the point that EQT are making here is that the only way to destroy demand is to destroy demand. That you know, it is only by just pricing out the demand that you can get this back to equilibrium, because yeah, you know, there's not enough storage. So the hot summer weather um, isn't necessarily the only driving force either. So this is the next thing that I noticed, was because I commented on a prior article about it being 16.6, that here in the latest numbers, that it's jumped again and it's now 16.8. Now, obviously, zero point 0.2, you might say, oh, well, that's, so what? But that's 100 billion. That's zero point 0.1 TCF, that 0.2 from that week to that week. Now, maybe it won't be permanent, or maybe it will drop back, or maybe this, maybe that. But you can see how much of a difference. I mean, it's 5 BCF difference of demand per day, which again that's 1.8 TCF relative to last year, 1.8 trillion cubic feet. And just to kind of give you an idea, I mean, the gas storage is something like 0.6 TCF, I think it is. So we're talking, 3 times the US gas storage of demand. I mean, that's a massive, massive number, massive number. And it's interesting because elsewhere in the EIA website, they show these are our forecasts for LNG demand growth, and they say, in the 2026 scenario, so 2025, 2026, in 2026, under our earlier scenario, we believe that LNG demand will grow to 16.8. Well, guess what? It's happened. Not in the earlier scenario, but in the earlier than earlier scenario. That we essentially, what they've done is they've brought forward, by the looks of things, brought forward demand 1 year. This has grown to the earlier forecast for 2026. I mean, that is massive. That is massive. And it's the case as well that there's another 13 BCF of potential demand being either being built or that's undergoing is pending final investment decision. So I think my understanding of these numbers is this 10 is part of this 13, and what they're saying is that 10 of the 13 is approved and could move forward regardless of permitting, whereas 13, so there's another 3 that's sort of under review essentially. But you can sort of see, as the years move on, that these are just expanding, and even just the existing ones, you can see expansion. I'm pretty sure some of these are actually expansions as well. And then here, if we look at the global picture of LNG, so what we're seeing here is supply and demand by region. So supply is currently 15. Well, it's not. It's 16.8. But I mean, this is an EQT chart. So I took it from the EQT presentation deck. So supply and demand for Europe is 19. The Asia is 38, so that's 57. Middle East is 1, so 58. Yeah, and then we've got 2 down here, 60. So 60 is current demand, 60, and then I think I might have said 59, but I just counted it there. I think it was 60, or whatever it is anyway, 59, 60. But I mean, that then grows to 81 uh, um, by 2030. So 2030 demands, that's 5 years away. It's going to go 22 BCF globally of demand, 22, and then a further 15 by 2050. So just incredible demand backdrop, and that's obviously separate from domestic demand for other reasons. This was interesting as well. So the EIA, once again, bearing in mind that this LNG, this pink bit here, is the bit that I've just said to you has been brought forward. So that pink bit goes here, and this bit, which is electrical power, is forecast to drop in 2025. Well, if we've got the hot summer that I've shown you there, I don't think it's fair or right or even conceivable that we're going to see a 1 BCF drop when there's a record hot summer coming up. and we've just had a cold winter. So electrical power being down, I think I just don't see that one minus one there is valid. I think their forecast is wrong on this. Will prove to be wrong. I don't see that. So I think we could be looking at this growth here not being 4.6, that the demand could grow in 2025 by 6.6, maybe 7. Um, and that's based upon, yeah, it's based upon the LNG, it's based upon power, electrical power, and that's kind of, yeah, and then it gets even more interesting. So as well as hot weather, as well as static supply, growing demand, obviously, which has an impact onto prices. We've then got other factors like this, data centers. So EQT pursuing a strategy of data centers like DEC. EQT talk of an 18 BCF incremental gas demand by 2030. So in the next 5 years, 18 BCF 18 BCF. So 18 BCF times that by 365. I mean, that's like nearly 6 trillion per year. Just prove that out. I think that's my maths. Obviously, yeah, 6.5 TCF. I mean, that is massive. That's colossal. That is colossal. So, and then this bit here. So, oops, this bit here. So obviously, DEC don't have any supply routes really into North Carolina or Georgia or South Carolina, or Kentucky for that matter. But they have got plenty of pipes and gas wells in the West Virginia area, in the Ohio area, which is this one here, and also the Virginia area, which you see here. So I mean, this is sort of very much, there's a proportion of this which would be relevant to DEC. Obviously, this is an EQT slide that I'm showing you here, but yeah, it's interesting because I thought, yeah, actually, and I don't know who thought of this market strategy first, whether it was DEC or EQT. I've got a suspicion, well, as to who it was, but anyway, doesn't matter. But yeah, it's interesting to see all of this with these base and high predictions that that's what it is today and that's what it's looking like. So we're looking at at least 50% growth compared to today. Okay, for electrical power, and this would be where it's potentially off grid. In other words, rather than being supplied from the grid, a data center would just say, like, run the pipe up to our, run the pipe up to our facility. Basically, we'll build a generator that we use, that we can control, that you supply the gas, and we'll produce the electricity ourselves to power our own facility. That's the idea, and that facility might be that it's using electrolyzers, so they're basically generating electricity from reformed gas, so CH4, and turning that into H, and then burning the H, or just a traditional combined power gas generator. Okay, anyway, that's that one, and yeah, I make the point here that EQT's share price has not fallen at all, pretty much, and in terms of read across, I mean, DEC and EQT, I'd say DEC's got far more in common with EQT. So the 33% fall to me feels like an opportunity, and also interesting that the market cap being 947, that net assets, obviously, if we got a little typo in there, I can see, but yeah, if we sort of say, well, ignore intangibles, then net assets is 1159, which gets you to a discount of 18% on tangible NAV. So you're getting a discount at the current price, in the sense that the assets of the company are worth more than what you pay for the company. And I mean, obviously, the assets being they've got 2.9 billion of oil and gas properties at book value. They've got this PP&E is equipment, so 450 million of equipment, 35 of cash, 260 of tax credits. So this is because in some years they'll make losses and you end up with a deferred tax for that reason. So you've got 3.6 million of assets. By the way, what I've done is I've stripped out the unsettled hedges out of these numbers. So this is an adjusted balance sheet, because I mean the point being that why would you? I mean, obviously from a statutory point of view, you've got to present the unsettled hedges, but those unsettled hedges are future year costs of sale. So in a way, like to actually look at what the business assets are, if really if you're sort of valuing this on the basis of it being a going concern where those future costs are going to be offset by future revenues, because that's the bit that obviously when you look at the balance sheet you've got to say, well, what, like if I was closing this down tomorrow, then fair enough, you'd have to include the fact that I still owe for these hedges 8 years in the future. I'd have to pay out on those, on closing out those hedges. But as a going concern, I mean, I'll have 8 years of revenue for the next 8 years that offset against those costs. So in a way, it's a bit weird to be like, from a matching point of view, it's the wrong policy. But the problem is that from a hedging point of view, it's the right policy. So there's a bit of a weird conflict which accountants will understand, but non-accountants will be scratching their heads over. And that's basically where I'm getting the numbers from anyway. So 18% discount on that adjusted NAV, and then yeah, so just kind of talking about how having debt is a good thing, not just a bad thing. That debt is by definition bad, and that my view on that. I mean, and I get where people are coming from. That, oh, it's worrying to have debt and so on. And in your personal life, if you're too indebted, then that can be worrisome. But debt enables this business to grow. And with the debt you can buy assets, like you can see it here. I mean, the liabilities are 2.7 billion. Well, that's obviously enormous. Borrowings of 1.5. This ARO is the offset liability against these assets. So this is kind of the cost of sorting them out. And as they are sorted out, when I say sorted out, decommissioned essentially. So as they are decommissioned, the cost of decommissioning comes off this number here. And this number here is a pro rata on what the total decommissioning cost is. And the total is lower than the overall assets, the decommissioning cost. Again, if you had to close this business down tomorrow, then the decommissioning cost would obviously be higher than this, assuming as part of closing it down, you shut off every well, and you kind of literally shut it down where no one else was ever going to mine or extract the gas and the oil from the gas wells and oil wells, which of course is ridiculous. You would sell them on to other people and they would take them on. So this idea of shutting it down and like how much this should be worth. I mean, this is worth 642 as a proportion of the life left in the assets. There's still 3/4 of the life. It's like depreciation. I mean, would you, if you bought let's say you go and buy a brand new Ford Focus. I don't know, let's come up with a name of a car. Ford Focus. Would you sort of write off the entire value of that Ford Focus in the first year that you buy it? Or if it's, let's say this Ford Focus is going to last you 10 years, would you not depreciate it by 10% a year? Uh, you might sort of say, well, yeah, after year one, I need to do a declining balance. So I'm going to reduce it by 20% a year, so 20% of, let's say it's £10,000. I'll just make it easy for myself. 2,000 in the first year, and then 20% of 8,000 would be 1,600 in the second year. That's what's called declining balance depreciation. But you wouldn't sort of write off £10,000 in year one and then say, oh, the Ford Focus is for free in year 2 to 10. I mean, or at least some people would, but that's not the correct treatment of it. If that Ford Focus is going to serve as your car for the next 10 years, that car's cost you 1,000 a year in depreciation, plus whatever it costs to run. And that's the same with this ARO, is that you only really should be accounting for the proportion of liability that you've created for yourself by using a quarter of the assets, or a third of the assets. So anyway, um, this I thought was interesting as well, that EQT don't hedge as heavily as DEC. And I was thinking, well, why is that? And of course, the answer is that, well, I mean, apart from obviously it's a risk averse strategy to hedge, but it's also, DC has to hedge because of the terms of its ABS debt, that they say, you've got to hedge, because if you hedge, we know that we're going to get paid our money back, and it's guaranteed. So yeah, EQT only hedge about 50%, but what they talk about was the fat tail distribution, that when prices go up, as here, that because of volatility, that they want to be able to take advantage of that and actually get the unhedged value of these high prices. So kind of hedge when it's advantageous to do so, and don't hedge when it's tactical and opportunistic. So again, some interesting thoughts there. And that 300 million bond that DEC took out at a higher rate of interest, that's what I believe that's all about, because that 300 million is not dependent on a hedging strategy. There's no hedging condition that we know of, at least, connected to the bond. And generally with bonds are bonds. I'll pay you back in 5 years' time, and I'm good for it. Whereas the ABS is sort of secured. It's secured on assets, and part of the security is the hedged income that's promised against that. So the hedges themselves are not terrible. I mean, they're pretty strong, actually. I mean, 357, 344, 340. Obviously, that's far higher than the revenue rate for DC in 2024. So that's sort of decent. But it's interesting. I mean, for that to be a shabby number, like, gas prices would have to be what, above $4, $5. And gas prices at the moment are about what, 325, I think. Pretty sure. Let's just quickly grab that as well. Let's bring him over. Yeah, 332. 332 is pretty good. And that's forecast. Yeah, forecast to go up. You can see that there. Forecast at 395 in 12 months' time. So that's interesting. Next spring, they reckon it'll be nearly $4 in spring, which suggests that it'll be. I mean, I haven't looked at the January hedge, but well, actually, I think I might have done on natural gas. Jan 26. There we go. Huff 26. There we go. There's your answer. So if you've got 484 next January, next winter, let's say that's the winter price. Obviously, if you've got a hedge at 357, that is shabby, isn't it? There's your answer. So, yeah, as it stands, I mean, the hedge is about 80%. So the other thing that I then thought about, though, was, well, hang on a minute. Earlier on in my article, I was talking about 2554, which of course was the EIA number. Remember, that was the EIA saying that the average was going to be this. Whereas actually, well, if the hedge is that, and obviously the hedge component and again, I just ran the numbers and came out with, well, hang on a minute, that that level there will will bring out a basket price above 25.54. It's actually a basket price of 26.31 if prices are 330, which is obviously well, I mean, that's actually obviously below the 332 that it is. Oh, sorry, no, hang on, 324. There we go. So I think it was 332 earlier on in the week. So, but let's say 330 is the average for the year, which obviously is, it's been at 4 and about above 4 for most of the winter. So 330 would suggest that we're going to see it go down to what, 260 in the summer for it to be 330 average. Or if you say, well, no, hot summer, large demand, like if we saw an average of $4 unhedged, okay, that comes out at let me just move that so you can see it, 26.93. So again, a lot higher. And I sort of thought, well, okay, let's run the numbers again. Let's just see what that looks like. So that's the 26.93 that I've done there, and that then comes out much higher. You can see the profit numbers there. We're looking at what, 180, 280, 350, 350 net profit. Okay, so that's kind of the evidence why I believe that, I think we'll see it go to 2.8 times price earnings in 2025. Is that and I don't think $4 is particularly aggressive when you can see for yourselves. I mean, it's like, if that's what it is in January, well, what about December? So you're looking at natural gas December 2025. I mean, I imagine it's going to be something not far off. There you go, 456. So $4 average when it's been at and above $4 for the winter, the past couple of months, and then if it's going to be sort of 480, 450 going in towards the end, once I think $4 might even be a bit on the low side. So I don't think my assumptions are that far away from reality. I don't think I'm wrong on the depreciation. I don't think I'm wrong on the um, I mean, the ARO might be a bit out, but I mean, it's not going to be vastly out. The tax, I think I've got that about right. The interest, I think that's about right. Notice I've increased this as well. I mean, that was the other thing I thought was, well, um, I think I'd modeled it originally. Sorry, I don't know if I'd done it up on these ones, but I was sort of thinking about how $9.80 cost was what I was modelling, based upon there being synergies and economies. But I thought to myself, well, what if that doesn't happen, or at least let's assume that goes up and not down because of inflation and different things. Sorry, I've got them up here somewhere. There we go. There he is. Oh gosh, sorry. Let's go this way. Oh, there's Jon Snow. Hang on. Let's find it. There we go. Yeah, so you can see, yeah, sorry, I didn't say about this, but what I did in my original model was I had it all at 980 and I increased it to 1030, $10.30 cost per barrel of oil equivalent. So yeah, look, I mean, just to kind of bring this to a close, we're at 50 minutes. Seems every time I talk, it takes an hour. So hopefully this doesn't feel like Entmoot, and it feels like some interesting insights. But yeah, interestingly as well, like if we sort of said, well, when the dividends costing about 95 million a year, to pay a 29 cents per share per quarter, that that times 3 would still leave you with about 70 million with that level of net profit. Not that I'm saying, not that I'm advocating that they would restore the old dividend, but the point being that they could afford to restore the old dividend if they so chose. But of course, paying down debt is important. Doing buybacks is important. I mean, when you're at 18% discount to your tangible net assets, I mean, reducing the shares down is a great way of building value. Really great way of building value. Bring on the bringbacks, bring on the buybacks, something like that. Anyway, I sort of finished the article here with some other things that are going on that are also positive. I mean, has anyone thought about the fact that there's now this is a tax for manufacturers and producers. I'm not a tax expert, but I believe that Trump will apply this to oil and gas because they are producers. Okay, so if that's wrong, then it will be a 20% tax, not a 15. But compared to what they're paying now, which of course is UK 25% corporation tax, used to be 21, and the Conservative government put it up a few years ago. I'm pretty convinced that they'll move, and obviously it'll be a reason to move jurisdictions, to become a US entity rather than a UK PLC, is the fact that they'll pay less tax and a lot less tax. 15% will equate to 100 million a year. 100 million a year. I mean, in this model, look, they're paying over, what's that, 250 million tax. So if you can turn your tax from 25 to 15, yeah, I mean, that's where the 100 million's coming from. And obviously, as prices go up, I mean, if we're talking of a future where gas is at $4 and or at $5, or sort of higher prices, which I think we are, then obviously the tax saving is even bigger. I mean, it could save 150 million before too long. So that's another thing. I suppose I also sort of point out that buying US LNG is a very easy way of balancing the trade deficit, or the trade surplus. If you're a country that has a trade surplus, chances are that you can very quickly erase that by just buying a load of LNG. That's what Japan's doing, for example. And yeah, I mean, just taking the NPV, 6 billion NPV, and that was based upon that crazy low price in 2024. The net present values, the New York strip price. Yeah, that 6 billion is probably more accurately at today's prices, probably at least 10 billion. So you're paying 950 million for a 10 billion net present value. I mean, that's great economics. Great economics. 420 million free cash flow. So that's kind of saying, the equivalent of, I think it's less than that. I need to change that. Interestingly, just as an aside, you can get caught out with this kind of stuff where sorry, that Hargreaves Lansdown, for example. So if we go in and have a look at Diversified, they reckon that the market cap is 528 million, and it's not. It can't be. And they're £9 each, more or less. So it's 720 million. It's not 528 million. So apologies that's wrong, but that's wrong because you just expect these numbers to be correct, but that's actually really, really out, because they've obviously not taken into account and you can see the dividends completely garbage as well, because it's not 25. Um, yeah, look, I mean, they reckon that there's 8 million shares in issue. It's just absolute ridiculously just inaccurate, absolutely inaccurate. So yeah, transaction in own shares, pretty sure it's 80.6 as uh, so that says 8.5. Um, yeah, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Because if it's 8 million shares at £8 each, I mean that would make it a 64 million pound market cap, and it's in the FTSE 250. And yeah, I don't know why that's. Actually, I do know why. There was a typo. Like that is, yeah. So if we go back to this one, yeah, I spotted this that they, like that's why it's all gone cock a hoop. Is that the RNS was wrong, 80.6 million. I think they've missed out a digit in the RNS, screwed up the market cap prices that they're. I don't know. Anyway, it's probably enough from me anyway. You get the idea, and I'll be producing this, releasing this video, sorry, releasing the Substack article in the next day or two. But yeah, hopefully that's been useful. Yeah, sort of talk about hedges, talk about synergies. I mean, it's these points here about the yield, the synergies, the acreage. You know, this acreage at $1,300 dollars per acre. I mean, it's all good stuff, but it's stuff that I've talked about before. So there's I don't think there's anything new particularly in these points, other than just to sort of recap where the value lies beyond uh, the new points that I've raised in today's article. So anyway, I hope that's been useful. If you enjoy these videos, do like and subscribe. None of this is advice. It's, you make your own investment decisions, but would appreciate your support with all those little thingy jigs down there. So like and subscribe, and also the oakbloke.substack.com is where you can read articles, 668 of them. If you enjoy this, there's a link on my homepage of the Substack to subscribe to, or sorry, to support Emmaus. So I really appreciate your support in that. If you find these articles useful, and that they hopefully can make you some money, that's up to you. That's your bag. But yeah, if you have made some money, maybe you can give something back to that charity. I'd really appreciate it if you did. All right, Oak Bloke signing off. Cheerio for now. Cheerio.